Okay, thank you very much. I'd like everybody seated for our very honored guests we have here on this panel this afternoon, and we appreciate all of them taking time out from what I know are very busy schedules to be here, but they're all very concerned about the biggest and most complex problem we have facing our town and county and the monetary generator for the state of Wyoming. So let me introduce who our panel members are. I'm not going to allow them time to introduce themselves because that would take us to 5 o'clock. Yeah, I'll just ask you to refer you to the bios that you received in your kit, if you will, please. But we have with us Senator Mike Guru, Wyoming State Senator, and he's also the member of the Senate Select Water Committee. Representative Elizabeth Stower, Wyoming State Representative for District 23. Representative Andrew Byron, former fishing guide, as was Elizabeth Stower, Wyoming State Senator, Wyoming State Representative for District 22. Andrew, in case you didn't know that, I thought I'd straighten you out on that. Luther Probst, member of the Teton County Commission, and in fact, the chair of the Teton County Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Wes Gardner, member of the Teton County Board of Commissioners, and Councilman Jim Rooks of the town of Jackson, Wyoming. So thank you all for being here today, very much. And I guess I should note that Representative Stower and Chairman, let's see, what are they called? Commissioner Probst were married on this particular spot not that long ago, so we appreciate them coming back here to renew their vows with all of us. Though you do have a second chance to change your mind. Okay, so we've got questions. The first one I'll run down through the panel here. We'll give you each 3 minutes to answer it, and then we're going to have another question with 2 minutes to answer, another question with 2 minutes to answer, and then we're going to turn it over to the audience for the most important part, I believe, to get some of your questions answered. So we have a problem. If no one's convinced of that right now, please raise your hand. And it has to do with water. And it's a complex problem, and it's a big problem. But it is not a problem of the town of Jackson. And it's not a problem of simply the county of Teton County. And it doesn't belong to the state. In fact, we have 114 public water supply systems in this valley alone. We have over 30 independent districts, ISDs and water and sewer districts. Everybody who's dealing with water in one way or another. Now, it's going to be impossible to solve this problem if we leave it up to all of these different governmental entities and non-governmental entities to solve it. We need those entities, and in particular, our town, county, and state government to come together and work together. There have traditionally been boundaries that prevent that working effectively. So I'd like to ask each of you what you can do to see that we get the support from each of your particular segments of government to work together with the others to get this problem solved for us. We're going to need state backing, county backing, and town backing. Senator Guru, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear? Okay. Well, howdy, everybody. I'm sorry I have not been here earlier, but believe me, I've been kind of on the road a bit. I was in Lander yesterday, and I made it over today, and I really appreciate it and appreciate your question. Money to solve problems. I've lived in Teton County for almost 50 years, been in business, a small business person here for over 40, this year actually. And in government, as a planning commissioner, town councilman, county commissioner, member of the House of Representatives, and now the Wyoming Senate. I don't think money's ever been a problem in Teton County for anything. That's the greatest thing about this community, frankly. It's our greatest single virtue, I think, is that we have money, desire, will, passion, all in abundant supply in this community. But the problems that you're talking about, Brad, are going to take a little more. It's going to be a little deeper. But the good news is, with that money, that power, that passion that we have in this community, Actually makes it a little bit easier for someone like me at the state level, whether it be on select water or working with my colleagues here on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate, to try to get more resources for you. And that is because kind of the secret sauce that Teton County's always brought to the table is that, and I remind my colleagues of this almost every day, whether it's for money for schools or money for anything else that we're seeking, a community college just down the road here, and other various odds and ends over the years. Teton County's never asked the state of Wyoming for the first dollar, nor have we ever asked for the last dollar. This community's always stepped up. This community's always been there. And so when it come to the state, we're usually looking for that middle piece. Or maybe even at the start of the process to say, we've got the money ready to go to solve the problem. What we need to do is we need some study money to define the problem and to work on the scope. Where it was talked about in the last panel, maybe if a lagoon plan isn't what we want to do, if the current water treatment system that we have isn't what we want to go to another level, which I think we should, then that's going to take more money, but we need to study and plan. And that money is available, and it's available, and we can talk about that, but I want to hear from Liz, so I'm going to shut up now. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And kind of going off of Mike's comments, I've just been in the legislature for less than a year, but I've been an observer of the legislature for probably 3 decades. And I think it's worth noting that even though this community has often stepped up with dollars, there still remain challenges. And at the state level, that's exacerbated by the fact that we continue to rely on the mineral industry to support state government. And there's a general unwillingness to really address the fundamental need to replace those revenues over the long term. So as Jill mentioned, deferred maintenance and a piecemeal approach tends to be the way that things go. I certainly see this. I'm serving on the school facilities committee, and I see that approach where at the end of the day, it just ends up costing more. So creating that political will is something we all need to work on. The lesson I took away from this morning's panels is that advocacy really does matter. And that's something that, frankly, I don't think people have invested enough from this community or in the state as a whole. I really applaud Protect Our Waters. I think you can see with an organization like this that focuses its work and really takes an advocacy role in a way that's effective, that can really make a difference, and that you can really get a super return on investment for just standing up an organization that's willing to do that hard work. And we need to see more of that across the state, frankly. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Liz. Andrew Byron, House District 22, and Liz and I joined as freshmen together, and she mentioned that she's been observing the legislator for 3 decades, and I've barely been alive for 3 decades. So I just want to take my friendly jab. I live right in the epicenter in Hoback, and we have my colleague in the Senate and the House just spoke about money. What fascinated me when my wife and I moved down there 6 years ago was data. We need continued collection of data, accurate data, which, as we did that, immediately supported science, which in turn, when we have that support of the data with science, we can get messaging out. So, I think it's fascinating to be at an area that we've talked about many times today in Hoback, and we've made great strides in getting a improvement district down there, finally formed after many attempts, but we need data backed by science to get messaging out so we can get more buy-in. And down there, the challenging part is, my well is a couple 100 feet away from another well, and I have extremely high nitrates. I'm 200 feet deep. My neighbor's 50 feet deep and has not had a nitrate in the last 10 years of monitoring. But our other neighbor won't touch his water because it's great, but it's not. So I think that it's really, I learned a lot as I went through the purchase down there through the conservation district, and just being willing to break that Wyoming tough barrier down and get data, so then we can go after the money that my colleagues talked about. And we're talking about a water district down there that might have 40 some odd connections to start. It's not going to be even economically considered or feasible until we can get 100 connections. So I got to break the barrier down and get my neighbors to test their water, which is hard enough, let alone get them to agree to, hey, you're going to have to pay a fair amount of money to get this water that you think is all right, but I can actually tell you it's all right if we can get the progress going. So I think we got to continue to solve this problem by data sets. Obviously, Protect Our Waters JH is the most important partner in this, but I really believe in that data supported, which supports the science, which gets the messaging out, can really help us then go ask these different committees, and they're all over the state, so it's just it's collaborating together to go after these funds.
Let me just interrupt just a second. Thanks, Mike, Liz, and Andrew. Let me tee the question up one more time now that we move to our local officials. It is, how do we overcome separate government entities and get the government entities that we have that are involved in this issue to work together to solve it, including ISDs and all the entities out there that have their fingers in water right now. Unless we get these entities to work together, we're not going to solve the problem. And let me just throw out a term, a joint powers board. And having primed the pump with that, let's proceed. Luther?
Thank you. It's a great question. Before becoming a county commissioner, I worked all over the West with local governments on a range of conservation and water and energy type issues. And one thing I learned is that with local government structure, with local government operations, inertia is strong. And there's no simple answer for overcoming that. The best answer I have is the fact that the difference in water quality and conversation about water is public advocacy, is public pressure. And there has to be sustained, sophisticated, persistent, widespread public pressure on the local government officials. And I completely agree that we need government works best. Local government works best when the scale of the governance aligns with the scale of the problem. Whether that's transit crossing state lines or whether that's water coming from Yellowstone through Grand Teton and into this valley. And currently our wastewater system governance does not align with the size of the problem. We have a 2 square mile town, no offense, Jim, that governs the wastewater for an area that's much larger. And so where was I? The governance doesn't match the scale of the service or the issue, and we need to do that. And for that to happen is going to take concerted public pressure. And part of that is PAL-JH operating as a 501c3. There also needs to be other mechanisms. There needs to be probably a different organization that's more of a fund, a venture fund for water quality that helps chip in to complement the public dollars. There definitely needs to be a 501c4 or a PAC that does more political work. It's time to move beyond the little videos where people running for office get a chance to say how much they love water and actually talk about specific issues, and then interview candidates and make choices, endorse candidates, do the thank and spank thing, and just generally have a very sophisticated approach to influencing, because it's going to take that to overcome the inertia that is inherent in local government. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Brad. I became county commissioner about 9 months ago, and as many of you know, I ran on water quality as one of my primary issues. And upon entering office, I started to knock around. Okay, what can I do? How can I be effective in this? And there wasn't really a path forward. And I started to think about the problem in terms of agency and how I thought being elected was going to give me all this agency to affect this big problem. The county doesn't have any assets. The county doesn't own any pipe outside of a half mile on Adams Canyon. And so I started to move the pieces around to get some assets in our hand so that we can start to be a player to bring more people off of their septic systems. Because to me, the biggest problem is septic systems in the floodplain. And, you know, as a county commissioner, I just assumed I would have an ability to affect that. And at the outset, I didn't find that to be true. So right now, we're looking to acquire the line running south of town. It's currently owned by the school district, and that creates myriad problems for people trying to connect. So the next thing I ran into was the sewer capacity that the town controls. Not necessarily the current capacity, but the future capacity that they're beholden to their ratepayers who haven't built out yet. So for me, where I'm kind of knocking at that door is, what can we do as a county to support the future sewer needs of this community? You know, I ran on the platform of I don't see a line between the town and the county, and so one way that I've proposed to affect that is for the county to start putting some chunk of money aside each year dedicated to future sewer capacity, so that when we have people along our lines who want to connect, and we go to the town and we say, and the town says, sorry, that's already spoken for, we can turn around and say, we've got money earmarked, you know, it's up to X amount of dollars that we can deploy to help you with your future capacity concerns. So I see us as partners in treatment, and yeah, that's what I'm working toward.
I'm the only one who wasn't handed a microphone. I'm trying not to take that personal. So, before I became a statesman, right, or a public servant, I really struggle with that term politician. But I'm a public servant, just like I was when I was a school teacher for 27 years. And forgive me, but the question that we got with regards to this opening was, what's the number one issue pressing on, what's the number one problem pressing on this issue, which has been rephrased, but I think it's essentially the same question, right?
No.
So, yeah. Well, I'm gonna speak to, like, you know, there's a comment earlier. We have a collective understanding and acknowledgement of what the problem is. We fundamentally know most of the solutions. So what's going on? Why is more not happening? And there's some good stuff happening, but and it's a tough one. You know, I could easily. Yeah, I'm glad that money's not an issue, because I work in local government. 78% of our funds come from sales and use tax. We're running balanced budgets, but only because we're pulling money out of our reserves. And in 2027, the town will be bankrupt, right? So we don't have money, right? It is a serious issue, challenging. But I understand that there are other entities and public-private and philanthropy, all kinds of different solutions with regards to money. But after thinking long and hard about what is the quintessential problem here, I think it has to be, in my opinion, it's competing priorities, right? I really think it is. And, you know, right here, right now, I always wish that we could take a vote right now, because it would happen. But you let a week pass, and the recent SPET tax that Paul Hansen wrote about in his Common Ground article stated this with regards to just look how we prioritize the recent SPET. And I challenge anyone to suggest that any of those things weren't deserving. They all were, right? So it's easy right now to sit here and say we need to allocate large chunks of money towards this, and I personally believe we should and work towards that. But let's see, housing, health and human services, transportation, healthcare, education, these are really important things as well. And so I think that's the difficulty. I think 5.5% of our recent SPET vote which will probably be a decade-long vote before we have another opportunity to do that. 5.5% was specific to water, right? The other 95% fell into these other priorities. And so I think it's a matter of, I agree with everything that's been said, but fundamentally, and I just want to finish this, I know I have 30 seconds, but forgive me with a quick metaphor. The town owns the wastewater treatment facility, right? You'll hear that again and again and again. Thanks to the Porter family, a lot of people helped to make that happen. But when you look at it, it's like, I don't know if any of you own a lake boat in Jackson, which is a horrible investment. But everybody always wants you to upgrade your boat, and you need a surf boat, and we love having you. You need to consider getting a bigger boat because they get to use it. But when you own it, and you're the one who has to winterize it and store it and maintain it or whatever, so I struggled with this. I love metaphors, if you can't tell, but it was like, that's the difficulty sometimes on behalf of the town as far as our real-world political scenarios to go, I appreciate it all, but for better or for worse, one single entity owns it. And I would like to look at a JPA or a more futuristic, expansive ownership model.
Okay, let me apologize to the entire panel, as raised by our town representative, and that is the person who originally put these questions together was Kevin Regan, who's a much nicer and less direct person than I. Kevin isn't feeling well today, so he gave this over to me, and I changed his questions just a little bit. And the next question that I'd like to ask everybody to respond to, that I've just made up right now, listening to all of you try to respond to the last question. Thanks, Jim. So we've been beating our heads against this wall for 9 years now. Friends of Fish Creek and Protect Our Water. We're making progress. You're right. Spent measures were prioritized. There's only one that's ever gotten 80% of the vote, and that's water. So I think it's been prioritized by our residents here in this valley. But we're beating our head against the wall here, and everyone I talk to in the public says to me, duh, every time I talk to them. It's a nonpartisan issue. It impacts everybody. It impacts every aspect of our lives, economic, commercial, educational, health, recreational, and our wildlife. And the question I get from everybody is, why? Why are we not all over this from a government perspective and on top of this and correcting it out? It got us 2+ years of my lives and other people's lives to get the WQMP moving forward, and a donation of $250,000 from people. So the first one first. What do each of you see as the biggest governmental or political obstacle that we have that's going to slow this process down that we should focus on? Why don't we start from the other end and go this direction this time?
Now I have to get my notes back because they're relevant again. So I spoke a little bit to it, but I want to help underline the problem a little more in a little more urgent manner real quick, if you don't mind. Because I don't think a lot of people are aware of this, because this is hot off the press. So last week, on behalf of the town council, I certainly just speak for myself, but we've supported county connection to the town system every single time that I've been on the town council, and I always will, because I know that's the right thing to do for the environment, right? But it doesn't make a lot of sense on a lot of other levels, right? But we were asked to hook up Indian Springs, this zone, right? Which we all were unanimously in favor of, right? And it took a couple years for everything to coalesce. But check this out. So, we keep hearing that we did a capacity study of the wastewater treatment facility. And generally speaking, you could read it's a long, in-depth document, but we're saying we're okay for a period of time, right? We're not at capacity, and we might have 6 or 8 or 10 years left before we have to do something. That's not true. The facility itself has capacity, but the infrastructure to get there does not. And that is like an aha moment, I think, for our community, that we can't wait 6 or 8 years or 10 years down the line to think that system down there, because it has space. So the example was the line that would connect this subdivision to the system flows through a pipe that goes under High School Road, and that pipe is over capacity. So I just wanted, like, I came here today, I want to share this with people because that was brand new to us, and I pulled it off the consent agenda, right? It was supposed to be a consent item, and I'm serious about doing my homework, I read that line and said, wait a minute, we got to pull this off. What do you mean it's overcapacity? I thought our capacity study said we're good. We're not good. So I'm sorry to not answer more of your question as far as the greatest challenge, but I want to underline this issue that it's now. Like, we cannot wait 6 or 8 years, which would be part of the challenge, right? It's to pretend that we have this time. I don't think we have the time. And I don't think your organization does either, or most people in the room. But this idea that capacity study prompted us to think, oh, we have some time. I don't think we have the time.
I think the biggest issue facing the community from a government perspective is what I spoke about a minute ago. The county doesn't have a lot of agency to help fix the problem because we don't have any pipes. So, you know, whether a JPA is the right next step, I'm not sure. What I'm sure of is, as a county commissioner, I'm damn well going to do something about it. And what that is building some assets in this valley, in this community, so that we have the ability to play a role in helping get septic systems in the floodplain that are near the sewer lines, connections to the sewer. And I really think that the town issues, when it comes to water quality, are all of our issues. I see every issue that he talks about as an issue that applies. The voters should hold me as accountable as they hold him. Now, that's not quite fair to me, but it's my job to build the agency that the county residents deserve. And for me, I was frankly shocked when I came into office and realized how little ability I had, having been given this responsibility, to actually do good. So again, what I've done is try to go out there and set the wheels in motion. And I guess my real answer to your question is government bureaucracy is, you know, maybe that's the inertia that Luther's referring to. It's a challenge to go into an organization and really try to light the fire, and it takes time. And I'm a patient man. I understand that I'm not going to come in and change the world on day one or year one, but I think we're on a path to getting some assets to give us some agency to affect the situation.
Good question, Brad. For me, it comes back to inertia, and there's agency or administrative or bureaucratic inertia. There's also political inertia. And I think one of the worst things that's ever happened to our effort to get clean water is the fact that the water quality spec measure passed by the highest percentage ever, because it causes people like Brad to think that they've got a popular cause. I'm sorry, Brad. To think that they have a popular cause.
I'm delusional.
And that
that's
just
all.
the sheer power of that cause will cause good things to happen, and it doesn't. Everybody supports, and we've seen polls nationwide for decades, huge percentage of the population, more than any other environmental issue. People support clean water. They support it in the abstract. That doesn't mean they support it when it's time for a specific vote or a specific issue. It doesn't mean that they're going to support it over other priorities, you know, like Jim's list: housing, transportation, human services, and other things. And so, yeah, it's really easy to say, oh, we all love clean water, but then when it comes time to come up with the money, to come up with just the limited political bandwidth, if you will, there's only so many hours in the week, to deal with issues because septic tanks implicate growth, and you know, growth is a different issue. And so my point is that you know, I had the opportunity to talk with a U.S. senator this summer. I won't name him or her, but he was, you know, he's probably the leading environmental advocate in the U.S. Senate, and he's constantly expressing, I'm going to be nice about this, hope that the environmental movement will realize that they need to spend more money on politics than they do, because so many environmentalists are self-righteous about it. Well, we're the environment. Of course our issue is good. Why should we have to sully our hands and spend money on politicians? to get them elected. And so that's the issue with water, is that we've got to recognize that just generic support for water quality does not translate into the specific action and the specific funding without political pressure. Sorry to go over.
That's right, Luther. I'll try to go quick. Brad, restate the question for all of us in the audience, if you don't mind.
Okay, it was, if I can remember it. Please help me out here. Yeah, what is the biggest political obstacle that we have to achieving what you've heard we need to put in place here today to correct our water issues, and how do we overcome it?
Thank you. 99 municipalities, 23 counties, and 430 miles to the capital. Raise your hand in this room if you've testified in front of a committee, not on this panel and not if you're a former legislator. In Cheyenne, keep your hands up.
Oh,
Keep your hands up. Okay, now lower your hand if it wasn't relating to water. If you've testified in front of a panel or a committee relating to water. I thought I'd get one or two. I did. So that's what I beg you as a freshman, and we talked about this, and Liz and we get lonely down there, and Senator Drew, but he's been down there for a while. Showing up, I mean, that is the biggest and the best use of your efforts, time, and what we discussed today. That eliminates the political and government side of things. If you show up and get in front of the people, the select committees, the working groups, the different parts of government that are meeting during session and out of session, because the other 98 municipalities and 22 counties, they show up a lot. I mean, I represent a district that also includes Alpine. I saw the mayor of Alpine, no offense to my great friend Haley, but I saw the mayor of Alpine 3 different times at 3 different meetings. He's a brand new mayor. It's a long ways, don't get me wrong, but I really think that one of the barriers to achieve the goal that we're talking about and getting back to how we can continue to support our local electeds at the state level is testifying and being present at those meetings.
Thanks, Andrew. I agree with Andrew's thoughts, but I also want to say that we really have to get to yes in this room, first off, in order to be successful in Cheyenne or anywhere else for that matter. It really means thinking through strong educational campaigns, thinking through what it means to organize, thinking about how to sit down, work through the challenges between the county and the town and the other entities in this community. That's the first job, I think, that we need to do. And I think it's quite possible, and this is a great start to that. But it really means rolling up our sleeves and making that happen. Because if we aren't of one voice, and if we can't find common ground amongst ourselves and a common solution, at least to start, we're not going to get anywhere outside of this community. So I think it's also it is worth noting that we have some challenges at the state level too, right? This is a state that, frankly, the only people that have invested in statewide politics have really been coming out of the far right for the last 3 decades. It's made it harder to spend money, even when we have it. It makes it harder to invest in our people and our communities. And addressing those things, getting involved in thinking about who's getting elected, organizing, thinking about who votes, that matters, and that making those investments in this community to influence the rest of the state is critical to the success of projects like this.
Thanks, Brad, for the question. It'd be really easy for me right now to say, there are 31 members of the Wyoming Senate, 29 Republicans and 2 Democrats. I'm one of the 2, and then just drop the mic and say, any more
There's your problem.
But that's not true, so I'm not going to say that. But I think it's in part what we've just heard, and it's, I got on Select Water for one reason, and it goes back to that 29-2 thing. Select Water I get to work with people that I disagree with violently on every political issue that we talk about on the floor, except water. We agree with water. Sherry Steinmetz and I don't agree on anything. We sat next to each other in appropriations. I know we don't agree, but we got on water together and we sponsor bills. We work together. Because she lives in Torrington, Wyoming, and in a farming community, and they need clean water to provide food that ends up on our tables. We want clean water to wind up in our taps, in our ranches. And so we have a common goal, and we work together. The Little Snake River Water District, which is a water district outside of Baggs, Wyoming, and Andy can start to smile, former Representative Schwartz, because we know who runs that outfit. They have 23 projects in front of the Water Development Commission today. 23. They have less users than are in this room. They have 23 projects. How many projects do we have? 0. So I'm going to put it back on you, Brad, just a little bit. I got on there to work and build relationships with my friends on the other side of the aisle on issues that I think we agree with. But I was also hoping, as kind of a little side benefit, that I get to make sure that, for example, the Water Development Commission Planning Program hands out $20,000 to $100,000 for studies just by filling out a form. Has one come in from Teton County? Nope. There are a myriad of funds available at the state level with our federal partnerships. It's like, another example, $1.6 billion. $1.6 billion in ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan Act money, came to the state of Wyoming. A lot of it was for water projects. So far, half of that money has been doled out. A lot of it's been asked for, more. But frankly, this year in our budget process, and on appropriations, we're going to redeploy almost $400 million of those ARPA funds because the people that applied for it haven't come in and finished the process of applying. They just applied and said, stick a pin in that money, it's for me. That money's available. A lot of it for water projects, water studies. As a matter of fact, the directives coming from the federal government specifically talk about new projects, bold, forward-thinking projects. That's what they want. And believe me, if you know the state of Wyoming as well as the three of us do, bold and far thinking isn't something that's in great supply in Cheyenne. It's more in supply in this room than it is in Cheyenne. I'm sorry. Truth hurts. But so I guess what I would say to you is get out your pens. The biggest impediment we have right now is get out a pen, get out a paper, fill out the form. The biggest impediment now is I'll throw in the money for the stamp. And we'll get it down there and let's get going. So, and Representative Storr is absolutely right. Before you can do that, you got to agree. And remember, in this community, sometimes that's an elusive goal. We have the will and the passion. Sometimes agreement can be a little bit elusive. But that's where, and Commissioner Probe said it best, we can get together here and with the right leadership, and I think we've got it, we can put that together, coalesce around some ideas and move forward. And we'll be waiting for you in Cheyenne to do everything we can to fund it.
Thanks, Mike. Great answer. So, do we have about a half hour left? Where are we on time? 15 minutes. So with that, I'm just going to turn the time over to our participants here to ask questions of the panel. Thank you all very much, again, for putting up with my changing the questions and for some great answers. Oh, Paul. I forgot it was I who was calling on.
This question is for Wes in particular. Wes, I appreciated your commitment to water quality, and I hear you on some of the obstacles we have, but some of the measures we need to take that I mentioned earlier this morning are fairly simple. Asking people to clean and inspect septic systems every 3 years, not mowing right down to the waterway, hiring a water quality expert. These are all things that have been on the table for a while, and we haven't done them. And Luther and Mark Newcomb voted for cleaning out septics. Natalia and Greg did not. I want to know, especially as this tri-hydro study comes forward, if you're our third vote for water quality.
You bet. I took 10 pages of notes today, and at the top of one of those pages, it says to look at the septic vote, because before I came, I've run 3 times, as you know, and when, I can't remember what year, I guess it was 2020, that septic system, that septic program still existed, and I got a rebate for doing whatever with my septic system, and then it disappeared. And I hadn't thought about it till you just brought it up. And as soon as you brought it up, it struck in me, oh, I got an opportunity here. So, top of my list, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, I want to encourage everybody in this room for being here, for being a part of this, because, you know, I grew up in the South, going to church too many times a week to count. And every time I'd walk out of church feeling fulfilled, uplifted, and then I'd go back to the real world, and, you know, it would kind of wear me down, and then I'd have to go back and get renewed. And that's what y'all are doing for me. And that's, I think, what y'all are doing for us. You're giving us a chance to drink from the fountain. So I appreciate Megan putting this on, everybody for being here. You have to be a fool not to sit where we're sitting and know the commitment in this room to this cause. And I fully appreciate any frustration you may feel with me, with us, as you see this problem not getting fixed. I could piece it together through Brad's questions that there might be some frustration. We are hiring a water quality specialist in the county. That came about because of the hard work of Powell GH's executive director, banging doors, doing the hard work of getting us on the same page. That position is going to come to fruition soon. You know, we've got this tri-hydro study. We're kind of stuck because we don't want to hire the position before we understand what qualifications we need to hire for. So we don't want to jump the study, but there's a lot of will. And if you're counting on me as the third pillar, you can count on me. I'm there for you. You know, I'm trying to find creative ways to solve these problems, and I appreciate all the efforts of everybody in the room. I've learned so much today. The panelists have been amazing. I think there's relationship building that can spring from here, but yeah, Paul, I'm your guy.
Dan.
Question for Jim. You mentioned the town of Jim. Question for you is, you mentioned earlier, I believe, that the town of Jackson is on the verge of bankruptcy if something doesn't change. Would the town consider selling its wastewater management facility to some other entity, the county, or perhaps a newly established joint powers board that would be a regional water and wastewater authority?
Well, you're talking to 1 out of 5, of course. I know you know the numbers there. I've always thought, to Luther's original point, right, you have I have a long history in this town, like 120 years, right? And we've had many chances over the years, but, you know, it used to kind of be that, like, Jackson was Teton County, right? And it's almost hard to, we still agree with that concept, but you're looking at a scenario where a 3 square mile municipality has nearly 100% of the infrastructure associated with water quality. The water doesn't care about any of these political boundaries or lines. And so I think that, like, I took a bunch of notes myself today, and I always try to take notes on, like, you know, truly, like, deep, actionable thoughts. And, you know, one of them is to say loud and clear to our community that the town of Jackson needs help, right? We've done a lot of really good work. I mean, look who has the infrastructure. Look who maintains it. Go tour that facility. It's outdated. The pond structure is not the long-term answer, but thank God we have that right now. And so I'm really proud of what the town's done, but I think it's, we're getting too big for our britches here. And so I wrote down, you know, invest now, hire smart people, and establish a gold standard, which was a kind of combination of a couple of our partners. We can't do that unto ourselves. We have a very limited budget, and it's not just us. Why would we, when it should be an entire regional I wrote that term down, regionalization, but I've always known that it had to involve the town and the county and the state. And I'd certainly be one to like revision water quality in our community for like the 21st century. And Jonathan Schechter, who was here earlier today, a colleague of mine, he talks about us using like outdated, antiquated systems to try to handle brand new problems. But as proud as I am of what the town itself, the town of Jackson, has done with regards to water quality, because we do a lot of great work with stormwater and all kinds of other tactics. Sediment ponds in town right next to Carnes Meadow, trying to deal with all kinds of different positive things. I do think it's important as an individual or as an organization to admit when you need help, to admit you need a problem. And so I think it's got to be partnership, partnership, partnership. And I would definitely be voting for a new ownership or operation system and associated with our wastewater treatment facility.
Okay.
Thank you for the panel, because I think it kind of brings some issues into light. One, I think a timeline, as an engineer, a timeline is very critical. Like even starting today, doing pilot testing, which means then doing a capacity, then getting to what we think we need to design for. If we start today and aggressively go for it, it may be a year and a half, 2, before we get a design into which we would, have decided what type and to go. So there's a timeline on actually getting infrastructure, going through these steps. We might be lucky to get a wastewater treatment plant new in like 6 years. The thing that I don't hear discussed, and I think it's because it's kind of newly understood, is clay lining systems are the ones we have are near the end of life, which means it's highly probable that we're leaking. And there's no system in place, there's no monitoring wells that are active to determine whether these systems are leaking or not. I know this is something that's probably not well understood. When Powell brought the issue up to the city, it was something they hadn't quite considered. The state is considering mandating that they've got to put monitoring wells. We did consult with an outside expert, and he said, yes, 50-year-old clay liners are most likely leaking. And then, so it's not just septic systems, it's a leaking clay line system that is probably going into Flat Creek, going into the groundwater, and then going into the Snake. So it's not, you can repair them at great cost, and then even at that great cost, you're not going to be developing anything new. It's kind of like what Jill said, we're just putting a bunch of Band-Aids on it. Having to reline clay liners is very expensive. You have to take them out of service, you've got to dredge them. If you looked at some of the reports, that was millions of dollars to dredge and try to maintain our capacity. So I think it's really important to have a timeline on what it is to get a new system, but let's get a timeline on a failing system also, so that those match up, so that we don't end up in some crisis. That's my suggestion.
Okay, I don't think there was a
Don't you
question.
think?
Oh, go ahead.
Don't you think is the question, wouldn't you think? We have monitoring. It's in Hoback Junction in my kitchen sink. So, it's not a joke. It's we're talking about. We all know where the water that fell today flows, and that way's downhill. So, there wasn't really a question there. I think we could all agree on that. But I talked to data earlier. We have okay data because there's discussions over the last 9 years, but we have great data on the south end of the valley where gravity feeds this water.
I just add that I think it speaks to what our experts said this morning, which is the importance of making these problems visible to the public, to be able to see them, to talk about them, to tell that narrative, and then at least by then saying, all right, here's a solution to help us decide which is the right way to go. Invest in that, and then we can more easily come to a decision process about what makes sense as a next step.
I guess the only thing I'd add on to your question, yes, I do agree. But also, at water development, what we do is, and we try to answer that very question. And so, you articulate what it is that the problem is and what you want and where you think you want to go, and then you have a study phase, which is funded. And no matter how long, if that takes over a year, if that kicks back into a second year, usually what we do is we go through all the projects. We say they're not finished yet, and they're still in study phase. So we add, whether it's more money for the projects that's been specifically asked for. Oftentimes we'll just add a 5% inflation factor across all the projects that aren't finished yet. Then you go on to phase 2, which is design, and same thing. And we'll keep, as you refine your studies and get down to start to hone in on what exactly you need, that funding can be there. And then when you get into the build phase, you're right there. And so you can work through that. And there's been projects in the pipe for years, and we just keep adding money to them. As a matter of fact, it's becoming a little bit of a concern to some of us that is, are they really doing it? Sometimes I think we have to kind of go back now and say, if you're not doing anything, we're going to claw that money back. But we do have that and do have a built-in system for it. We just need the application. We just need you to articulate where your areas of concern are, what you want to do. And I think you'll find that we're ready to go.
I just want to ask Mike a question about the question of water quality versus water quantity. I'm old enough to remember when the Development Commission mostly dealt with water quantity issues, and I'm just wondering how it's evolved over the last couple of decades to address water quality and the connection between the two.
It still does, and that's usually where our greatest, some of our larger arguments come through. Is that we have water 1, water 2, water 3 are 3 different accounts. The third one is for dams. And so, we're always talking about water storage and what we should be doing with that. But actually, there's more action now in water 1 and water 2 in those studies, in those more and more people are coming up with that. And that's why I think there really are opportunities out there for us to come forward with ideas and projects. And so, how they relate to each other, that's something like I say we jostle with quite a bit in water.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kay, thank you for bringing up groundwater movement. There's another water quality issue that we haven't discussed today that's deadly serious that I would feel remiss if I didn't bring it up while I have the podium. But there's a suite of related diseases that are a product of TSEs, or transmissible spongiform encephalopathies. In sheep, it's Scrappies. In cows, it's mad cow disease. In humans, it's Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and in elk, it is chronic wasting disease. We now have chronic wasting disease in this valley. We also have the largest concentration of elk, probably in North America, of ungulates, probably in North America, in the south end of the National Elk Refuge, right up against the hospital there. That area is also just a couple hundred yards from the towns, at least one of the towns' well fields. And anytime you have a well field, you have a cone of depression, where the sucking of water out of the ground kind of pulls other water towards it. And I've asked scientists, I'm completely relying on others, who can't discount the probability that there's going to be a dead elk in the spring. The prions, or the TSCs, are going to migrate into the groundwater, conceivably migrate into the drinking water supply, and these prion vectors can jump from chronic wasting disease to CJ disease, and getting that in our water treatment and delivery system would be catastrophic. The advantage is it would lower our property tax bills, but I shouldn't make light of it. I was doing pretty well there for a while, wasn't I? But it could be a mess. And the Elk Refuge is starting its new management plan for elk and bison. And it's something that I hope everybody in this room will put on the table. Not blaming anybody, but just recognizing that the world is changing and that this is a disease vector that could jump to humans and could be catastrophic. It's a different issue than what we've been talking about, but it's no less real. Sorry for that interjection.
No, thank you very much.
One last question.
One last question.
Sorry, I'm going to take it.
Sorry, you're going to take it?
I'm gonna take
Oh, okay.
So we have been intimately involved in the Water Quality Master Plan, and what we have realized is Tri-Hydro really is an engineering firm, and they're not going to tell you that you need a joint powers agency or a joint powers board. They're not going to give you the financial structure that you need in order to expedite this. So why would we wait for those recommendations? That's my question.
We shouldn't wait. And there's a pretty mature audience here, meaning most of us are like middle-aged or older. This phenomenon where you say, we're just, as soon as we get that, then we'll be able to solve the riddle, right? I've just never really seen real life experience of that, right? I absolutely appreciate the water quality master plan, but I've been hearing it bouncing around the community saying, just wait, when I've been talking about water quality issues, just wait, when we get the plan, right? And to your point is the plan will be incomplete because it likely will not tackle some overtly political issues or human issues or getting to the yes point the Representative Storr is talking about and reaching agreement as a local community about what parts to do, how to timeline it. So I appreciate your comment there because I absolutely support it. It has to occur. I'm glad our community prioritized it. But the idea that we should just wait and not do anything until we get that plan, I think, is foolish.
I don't think we should wait for the plan to do anything. But when you're talking about hiring a new position, and I feel like I'm flying a little bit blind. Am I supposed to hire a grant writer? Am I supposed to hire an engineer? Am I supposed to hire a technical expert? Who are we supposed to hire? And my hope is the plan gives us some sense of the type of skills that we want to hire in the county in order to execute the plan. Regardless, we're moving forward to try and gain assets. We're moving forward, and Andrew touched on it, but the number one thing you came and asked us for was data. We need data. Since I think 1972, there's been a need for data that was laid out, plain as day, and we haven't done anything to fill our data gaps. So we don't even know how big the problem is. So for me, that's the number one thing that we really need to focus on. And as far as hiring the specialist, waiting 3 months to see what the plan reveals as to what path we want to choose for that, I just feel like there's a $1.2 million investment in this plan, and I want to make sure that I'm not moving fast in hiring the specialist, and then I get somebody whose skill set doesn't match what the plan is suggesting steps 1 through 3 are. I don't know. I haven't seen anything from the plan. I have no idea. I haven't done any digging. I'm just kind of waiting on it. But for the specialist, I'm not waiting on it for the assets. I'm not waiting on it for the data. I think that there's a lot of work we can do in advance of having this person to lead the charge. But I could be wrong. I very well could be wrong.
I'll just, Wes and I agree a lot, but not always. I pushed for this position back in June. I argued then that we should hire the position as soon as the budget goes into effect on July 1. From my comfort level is there. I know, from my mind, what we're looking for, a senior level water quality specialist. I'm ready to hire as soon as we have the votes to do so.
I'm sorry, Brent, I have a question. I don't mean to interrupt.
Okay, well,
Yeah, you do.
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Mitch.
So, first of all, to the elected officials, thank you very much for your public service. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of the community and everything you do. The question that's been burning for me all day with the Wes, you really kind of brought back to the surface, is
is our government. Because as elected officials, I'm sorry to say this, you're temporary, right? You're going to be here, maybe you'll be here, maybe the next time we all get together in this room, it might be 6 different people. But our government is still going to be there, the people that are working in their jobs. And so for 40 years, our government has chosen not to do anything. I know that that's probably unfair, but so the question is how much faith should we have in our government? Because it's not really a debate to plow our roads. Some years it snows more, some years it snows less. Our roads get plowed. And clearly certain issues have gotten pushed that have advanced the community, but does water quality really require the things that are being discussed today? Does it really require the debate that we're having, or should it just be part of their job? You know, should it just be, should it really require us to have to do all this work to have clean water, to not have bad septic systems? Is that really where we're at, I guess is my question. Or isn't it just part of the deal that we shouldn't be polluting the ground with our private septic systems?
May I, or is that for any?
No, anybody.
Yeah, I think both of your premises are right. You look at at Ashley from the lady from Mashpee, Ashley from Mashpee, I'm sorry. I really hadn't planned that. From Cape Cod, a guy from working in the Big-Sty area. Did I say it right?
Okay, if everybody wants to respond to this question, let's give 30 seconds. Please.
Okay, I'll keep it quiet, but I'm having fun.
I can tell that. We're not.
It should be routine, but it's not, as we see in other places. And so the main message I would leave is absolutely we should be advocating persistently, sophisticated, with civility, but we must be advocating because like I said earlier, everybody supports water quality, supports clean water in the abstract, but do we support the sacrifices that are necessary to make it happen as a society? No.
Essentially, the answer to your question is no, you shouldn't have to do all this work to make sure you have clean water. But is it easy to get people in the floodplain off their septic systems? It's not. It takes work. It takes creativity. It takes thoughtfulness. We've had a number of panelists who are way above my pay grade, and I'm sure they could speak to the complexity of this. It's not that simple. So the other thing that exists after we're gone is you, and I'm part of you too. It's a representative democracy. So it's important what happens in this room. It's important what the people say, so that no matter who's sitting up there has to respond to it. So I hate to say it, but I do think it's important for you to maintain the pressure, whether it's on me or on somebody who comes after me.
Let's see, I'm a gov teacher, so humans, I think if Plato says humans are by nature political creatures, right? I wished it wasn't either, right? And I also have heard today, like what I call, trying to make this nice, is the delusion of simplicity, right? Like it's a nice idea to say everything's just so simple, but it is infinitely complex. And we do debate over plowing the roads, just so you know. And we had 6 out of 13 plow truck drivers hired last year. And I mean, it's like everything is very complex, and it can be frustrating at times, and especially as citizens, which we all are. But yeah, it does require this, just as a reality.
Okay, thank you. All right, I want to thank our panelists very much. Thank you for taking your time and being here, and we really appreciate your candidness and your responses. Thank you very much. Mic drop.